Or are we good?
Well, I won't be in
These are
till
on
10 or
split.
10:30, but,
Okay. Send them in a drive.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 6 o'clock. I will call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Miss Bigger, roll call, please.
Harrington.
Here.
Perkins.
Here.
Musgrave. Brandon.
Here.
Kinnaman.
Here.
Kyer.
Here.
Delaney.
Here. We have a quorum, and I would entertain a motion to excuse Miss Musgrave.
I'll make the motion to excuse Ms. Musgrave.
Second.
Motion by Perkins, support by Kinnaman to excuse Miss Musgrave. Miss Bigger, roll call, please.
Perkins.
Yes.
Brandon.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
Kinnaman.
Yes.
Kyer.
Yes.
Delaney.
Yes. Motion carries. Consent agenda. All items listed under consent agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the Village Council and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and discussed separately immediately after consent agenda approval in its normal sequence on the regular agenda. What is the pleasure of council?
I will make the motion to accept the consent agenda as it's written.
Second.
Motion by Kyer, support by Kinnaman to approve the consent agenda as presented. Ms. Bigger, roll call vote, please.
Brandon.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
Sorry.
Kinnaman.
Yes.
Kyer.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Delaney.
Yes. Motion carries. Public hearing, the Holly Mill Pond Special Assessment District. Do we have an introduction to this?
Sure. This is for Aquaweed, to do the weed control on the Holly Mill Pond. They've been doing it for more than 5 years. Everybody's been very happy with it. They have not raised the price in 5 years. We charge per footage for improved land and for unimproved land.
Very good. I will entertain a motion to enter into the public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion by Kinnaman, support by Brandon to enter into public hearing regarding the Holly Mill Pond Special Assessment District. Ms. Bigger, roll call vote, please.
Brandon.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
Kinnaman.
Yes.
Kyer.
Yes.
Perkins.
Here.
Delaney.
Yes.
Yes. Motion carries. We enter into the public hearing at 6:03. Very good. Yes.
Jim Clark, 314 Hadley Street. When I first moved to Holly, almost 35 years ago, the village was paying for weed control on the mill pond. And they did that for about 3 years. And when they quit, we happened to get weather conditions that caused a thick mat of dying weeds to be on the surface, resulting in a massive fish kill. We started looking around as to what could be done, and the first thing that was considered was a lake board. However, if you're familiar with Bush Lake, when you form a lake board, you lose all control. The County Drain Commission has it. So what we did was we passed a petition, had property owners sign, and asked the village to set up a special assessment district where we pay by the frontage foot for weed control. The pond's been there about 180 years or so, and silted in quite a bit, so it's shallow, and if you don't do anything for weed control, you're going to have fish kills and other problems. In the last 20 years or so, the partnership we formed with the village has worked just fine. We haven't had any fish kills. The pond generally looks pretty good, and Aquaweed does a good job. So I would strongly recommend we continue doing what we have been. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to comment as part of the public hearing? All right.
I'll make the motion to close public hearing then.
Second.
Motion by Kinnaman, support by Perkins to close the public hearing. Ms. Bigger, roll call vote, please.
Brandon,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Kinnaman,
Yes.
Tyre,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Delaney.
Yes. We leave public hearing at 6:06. Public comment. Members of the public may address council once recognized by the chairperson. Comments are limited to a maximum of 4 minutes for items not on the agenda. Council may extend this time by up to an additional 4 minutes by a majority vote. For items on the agenda, comments may be made after council discussion prior to council vote. Prior to addressing council, members of the public will please state their name and address for the record. Is there anyone for public comment? Mr. Clark.
Jim Clark, 314 Hadley Street. Got a couple comments about roads. Broad Street now, I believe, is the bumpiest road we have that does not have potholes in it. I think shooting stone to resurface a road can work well, but not on Broad Street, not with what we have. In fact, the crossing lines will not even adhere to the pavement. They're coming loose and going down the street. That's a situation that should not be repeated. I've had at least a dozen people ask me when they're going to put the surface coat on and smooth it out. Not happening. They're done. Another thing I have is I believe we have an ordinance that says you are to sweep your leaves into the street. One of my neighbors has been doing it for 20 years. I spoke to him about it once, but after a barrage of 4-letter words, I let it go because I don't enforce such things. But if you cruise around on the south end of town, you'll see piles of leaves in the road blocking the catch basins, just waiting to go down into our sewer system so we can pay to pull them out. There's no reason we can't have enforcement on, the rule that you don't put your leaves in the street, you bag them up. But we don't have that enforcement, and we're about to incur more expense as a result. The last topic I have is in the park where the new village offices are going to be. It's been proposed that yet we're going to have maybe another Veterans Memorial there. I would suggest to people that we've got a few Veterans Memorials around town, and if you polled the people, they might want something for kids or elderly folks, something new rather than just do the same old, and end up with 6 or 7 separate veterans memorials within our little village. I think that's wrong for that park, and I don't think the Park Commission or the council should pursue that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Is there anyone else for public comment? Ms. Mattson.
Anna Mattson, 15091 Western Valley. Several months ago, Parks actually approved a survey. I've kind of been waiting patiently for it to be brought up to council. I'm sure Mrs. Kyer just forgot. But this is actually a survey that was created by Parks and approved to be dispersed to the community, but yet it hasn't been sent through the email, the village email, which is free, so we can just send that anytime. So I would encourage council to encourage staff to do that. And just for context, staff made a survey that was unapproved and dispersed it with taxpayer money and actually sent it to people's houses. And that was an unapproved thing that they did. And now you have a survey that Parks actually approved and it hasn't been dispersed properly. So that's just some context there. So especially if people are talking about putting memorials in parks and everything, that survey is to help parks decide what to do with their parks in the future. So that feedback is crucial. And I think you guys, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm sure you want to hear what your taxpayers have to say about what's done with their money. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mattson. Anyone else for public comment? Ms. Everly.
I'm Sherilyn Everly from 314 Hadley Street, and I would just like to know, before we go raising money for another memorial, could we please raise enough money so we could move the depot? Because that really would benefit the community. We could have a bathroom and space. I mean, ours is a small community. We don't have a lot of capacity to raise money for this, that, and the other thing, and it would be nice if we'd finish the one big thing that would really help downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Everly. Is there anyone else for public comment? Mr. Rozell? Oh. Or Mr. Mishler?
Dick Russell, 512 East Maple Street. I'd like to say a few things about the memorial that we're hearing about, the Veterans Memorial. And I'd like to give you a little bit of background on what started that and where we're at with it. As you most of you know, Jerry Walker's been battling with stage 4 cancer, and I've been kind of his right hand, and so we've sat and talked a lot, and about a lot of things, just to keep him company and keep him from getting old. And I brought up the fact that if we're doing this building and putting a new office down in this park, why not add something to it that has some beauty to it? I've lived here for 30 years. Nobody has cared about that park. Nothing. We had one proposal about 2 years ago to have a dog run out there, and that got just chased out of town by the people. But it's been let go. And I haven't seen any citizens that have stood up and said, hey, I think this would be a good idea, and I'd like to head that committee. I'd like to do that. So, therefore, you know, there's one in Swartz Creek that's beautiful, and if any of you get a chance, you should go look at it. My name and my 2 brothers and my dad's are all on a brick over there that my sister bought. And that's how they raised funds for that. They had sidewalks leading up to it. Those sidewalks are lined with bricks. They've probably got 2,000 of them that they sold at $200 a piece. So anyways, I wanted to see about doing that. And so we kind of set up an exploratory. Nobody said, yeah, we're going to go do it. And we both agreed that we weren't going to involve the village as far as money, that we weren't going to take anything from the taxpayers, that we wanted to do it with private funds. And when I suggested veterans, he agreed with that. But then he came back and said, you know, I think we should also recognize our first responders. I think it would be a good idea to recognize firefighters and police officers and ambulance drivers and those people. So I said, I think that's a great idea. I like that. So we just put together a proposal, you know, just let's see what kind of response we get. And we had a couple of people that joined in and said, hey, we're willing to help free of charge. One of them was Danny Rasberg, who was an excellent sketch artist. And so he did some sketching for us. The other was Vince Iafano, who you all know, but he said that he was willing to help with the construction of it at no charge, you know. So then we said, okay, maybe we should put together a committee, not just us, you know, let's set it out there. And we're looking now for fundraisers to bring in people from law enforcement, from fire, from all of the veterans organizations, VFW, American Legion, the Kiwanis Chamber, whoever, you know, and let's make it a community project. So with that in mind, Danny drew up some plans, just proposals, not etched in stone by any means, and we brought them to the Parks Commission. and showed them. And they loved it, I think. You know, it seemed to go pretty well. So that's where we are today. And then Jerry, because of his incapacity, wasn't able to come tonight and put this on the thing to talk to the council about it. And we know that you have to approve it. If you don't want to approve it, don't approve it. If you do, great, you know. If you want to put a dog run out there, do that. But I'm just saying, this is an idea. That's all it is. And then can I have one more minute?
Almost to give him one more minute.
Second.
We good? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. So from there, we want to get everybody involved. If it's feasible, we want to do it. And we've got some beautiful plans drawn up, proposals that are flexible, that can be moved. And I think we can do it. And we're not about to take any taxpayer money for it. So that's what we got going. And one thing, I put it on Facebook, which is kind of a silly thing to do, but on the Holly discussion group. And I can tell you that I counted tonight, I had 175 responses. 6 of them were negative. All the rest of them they had questions in some cases, but there was nobody that said, oh, you're stupid and we should have a dog run there or whatever, other than half a dozen. So I think that the feeling is out there for the people, and I keep hearing about these other parks and everything. Well, a flagpole and a monument isn't really a... Anyways, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rozell. Mr. Michelin.
Joe Micheliner, 620 Academy Road. I want to talk about what Mr. Rozell just talked about. I'm kind of interested in, there's more than a monument going in that park. There's a tremendous parking lot going out there. Is that correct? Oh, there's no parking lot going? Oh, okay. Then apparently when I looked at the drawing, I was mistaken. I don't have anything against monuments. I've been involved in the building of a number of them, Genesee County, here out of Great Lakes National Cemetery. I don't have a problem with that. I think the location of it is not very good. It's kind of hidden away. I mean, it's down in Cyclone Park, and actually, how many people are going to go down there? And according to what I just heard, not very many people do go down there. So we're going to spend all this money, they're going to spend all this money and put a memorial in that no one is actually going to see, or very few people are going to see. I think we could probably do something different down there. I'm in agreement. I don't understand why we're not helping out kids and putting in park stuff down there. And I don't know, as a veteran, kind of interests me that we aren't doing something like that. And here we are, we're going to build another memorial. And if I understand it, it's not going to be a cheap memorial. So I'm just wondering if there's maybe some other way we could go about this. Maybe there's some other way that the park could be utilized. Now, I don't care about a dog run because I don't have a dog. I don't have a critter because I'm not a critter person. So that doesn't faze me in the least. But I think the idea of a memorial is a good idea. We have a number of them here in town. And I did kind of hear a rumor that you were also thinking about bringing some of the other memorials over to the one that you're going to do in Cyclone Park. I'm dead set against that. Like if you take, for instance, the Purple Heart Monument downtown, we tout ourselves as a Purple Heart village. Now, if you take the monument and stick it down there, then you've buried it and kind of goes against the grain of what we all talk about. Because we all proclaim that's what we are. You can go down by the village offices and there are plaques and I don't know, all kinds of stuff. So I'm just sort of curious, is this a really good use of that park? And I have no problem with the motives and whatever of the people involved. I think that's very noble. But I'm just thinking, you're going to stick this in a parking lot, basically is what I saw on the, I actually saw your schematic. So it's going to be stuck in a parking lot. And that sort of smacks of the state of Michigan to put their Vietnam Veterans Memorial in a parking lot, because they didn't want to give up any green spaces. So I'm just wondering, is this the best use of this? Is this really that phenomenal of an idea? And I don't know. Cyclone Park has been part of our history for a long time, and until recently, within the last 10 years, there were a lot of baseball games that were played down there. There were a lot of things that were happening down at that park, and I'm not exactly sure why it fell into disarray. Pretty good time.
Thank you, Mr. Mishler. Just one
Procedurally,
comment, please,
yeah.
per public comment period. Is there anyone else for public comment? Mr. Shield.
Ryan Shield, 320 LeGrand Street, Holly, Michigan. I'm going to piggyback off Mr. Clark's comment about the street sweeping thing. The curbs do need to be street swept quite a bit in certain areas, especially in quite a lot of the areas in south of town. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Shield. Anyone else for public comment? Right, seeing none, hearing none. There is no old business. New business, consideration of the approval of Resolution 2024-004, authorizing the preparation of the special assessment roll for the treatment of weeds on the Holly Mill Pond. What is the pleasure of council?
I'd make a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll second.
Motion by Kinnaman to approve, support by Perkins. Is there any council discussion desired on this item?
Nope, they do a good job. Needs to be done.
Very good. Is there any public comment desired on this item? Of course, we had the public hearing. All right, we have a motion and support. Ms. Bigger, roll call vote, please.
Harrington.
Yes.
Kinnaman.
Yes.
Kyer.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Brandon.
Yes.
Delaney.
Yes. Motion carries. Item number 2, under new business, consideration of the approval of council action request to create a committee to investigate cityhood. So at the December meeting, I informed the council of my desire to present for the council's approval a committee composed of citizens, residents of the village, and myself as council and a council liaison, to explore the possibility of the Village of Holly chartering as a city. The intention of this committee would simply be to research, to study the issue, and then to make a recommendation one way or the other to council whether to proceed with this process or not to do so. And I have presented for your consideration and approval a list of names which I do need to amend slightly. I am proposing myself as council liaison, Miss Nancy Rebar, Mr. Jim Koskela. Mr. Vince Iafano has withdrawn from consideration. However, I do have 2 names to add to that list to bring it to 5, Mr. Thomas Ryan and Mr. William DeSessa.
Good choice. That's what I was going to recommend.
So the idea of this here, just to explain my reasoning, was, rather than request that council approve a committee and then have to revisit the issue of who may or may not be on the committee at a later date. And also, rather than ask the council to approve whoever I choose to appoint, to give you a concrete list of names to consider. And my apologies that it wasn't more complete before this moment. But once again, those are myself for council liaison, Nancy Rebar, Jim Koskela, Thomas Ryan, and William DeSessa.
Could I make a
Yes.
recommendation of another name?
You can.
Joe Mishler
I will second that.
Okay.
would be a great addition. Just for some history, Mr. Mishler was on the committee that wrote our existing charter and has more than 40 years of history working in various aspects, as well as understanding the history in the community. And I think he would be a good asset to that process.
Okay. That brings us to an even number of 6. Are we?
You had 4 to start with, so.
Remember, Mr. Iafano has
Right.
withdrawn, so we have
Right,
myself.
but you would have been 4, which
Right.
I don't know the legalities of you actually being on that committee. From everything that I've looked at, we as a council are not supposed to be on that committee. It's just supposed to be a citizens advisory.
That's the same thing I thought.
So to be clear, I think what you're thinking of is a body which would come into play later on down the road in the process,
Okay.
and which would actually be elected, if I'm not mistaken.
They are, yes.
Yeah,
And
that
so
one
this
is
this
elected.
committee is simply an exploratory committee. It's a citizens exploratory committee, and it has one job: to study the issue and to say, yes, it's a good idea to move forward with the process, or it's not, right? And therefore, it would be appropriate for one of us, whoever that is, to be the liaison.
Is it possible to sit as chair and liaison without having a voting position on it as president of the council?
I'm not sure it's a committee that has voting anything. I think that
Don't
its
they only
purpose
vote
is
to make a
To
recommendation?
file facts and.
Yeah.
they're not even, we don't have a committee for recommendation. By our charter, has to be council members.
Only council? Okay.
A committee to do study or research can
Only
be,
presents?
only presents.
Okay.
From what I have kind of looked at the documents that we've got.
Okay.
Do you have a citation for that in the charter?
I don't know numbers and stuff, but there is a section
Yeah.
on committees.
Okay.
And in that, it only talks about council members, committees, and.
Committees of the
role.
council, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anything else cannot be the one that has any form of vote or recommendation. It can only be a research present kind of community body.
Mr. Gilner, does that sound accurate?
There's no issue with this. As I understand it, this is not to jumpstart the process. This isn't to take any action. This isn't even preparatory. That this is just to investigate, gather facts, explore options, those sorts of things. And so it can be 6 people, it can be 12 people, it can be council, it cannot be council, because in that sense, it's really, it is, I think you used the word exploratory only.
Okay.
So there's no worries in that respect.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
very
there's no
good.
purpose for
No
voting
need to vote?
in it, per
There,
se.
there is another legal matter, Mr. President. Do you mind if I?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Gildner, Thomas Ryan is one of the proposed seats, and he and his wife, well, Mr. Ryan expressed interest to me today, and I gave a glowing recommendation to the president. And when he took me up on that offer, Mr. and Mrs. Ryan want us to be aware that she sits on the township board. She's treasurer. They live in the village. So let's just say cityhood were to go forward, she would no longer be able to hold that position. They just want to be transparent. I don't personally see an issue with that, especially simply because it's only exploratory in nature.
Well, from our perspective, that may be her own issue with respect to the township. I mean, if she's on this and she thinks that
She
puts-
won't be on it, her husband would be.
Well, but if she feels that poses a conflict vis-à-vis her relationship with the township, she has to deal with with that issue. That's not our issue whatsoever.
Okay.
We can put anybody on there, and they have to be mindful of their own potential conflicts and how that may be perceived. But again, this is exploratory, as I understand it. So I don't see that it is conflicting to anybody, because no different than going to the library and starting to pull books, for example.
There's no decision being made.
Exactly.
Thank you, Mr. Gilner.
Thank you. What is the pleasure of council?
I'll make a motion to create a subcommittee to investigate cityhood.
Exploratory committee.
Yeah.
Exploratory
subcommittee.
committee.
Motion by Brandon. Is there support?
Okay, name off the names for sure.
The
Of
names. So we have a motion by Brandon to approve the council action request to create an exploratory committee to investigate cityhood consisting of Ryan Delaney, council liaison, Nancy Rebar, Jim Koskela, Thomas Ryan, William DeSessa, and Joe Mishler.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion by Brandon, support by Kinnaman. Is there any further council discussion desired on this item before we proceed to public comment?
I'd also like to throw in my 2 cents that I have sat next to Mr. Mishler on the library board for, 75 or 80 years now, something like that, Joe. And he doesn't don't kill me, he does an exemplary job. I 100% support him.
Thank you much. Is there any public comment desired on this item? Ms. Mattson?
Anna Mattson, 1509 Western Valley. 6.13 committees in our charter, Village of Holly Charter. A, the village council by resolution shall have the power to create committees comprised of 3 council members for the purpose of serving as a recommending and advisory body to the council. It's really disappointing that we pay for a lawyer to be here and you ask his advice and we're not looking at these things. If you want to call it something else, it doesn't matter. Our charter defines a parks board, a planning commission, whatever you want to call it, our charter defines every single one of those. So if you want a committee, it's comprised of 3 council members. And honestly, I think committees are a waste of time, because what's happened in the past is you have a committee and other council members end up going to that meeting anyway so they can hear what's going on. So why don't you guys just do it as a council? Do a couple special meetings and do it as a council. We voted for you guys to be in these seats. I don't want other people, the people wanted you for a reason. So if you want to do this, call some special meetings. Most villages have 2 meetings a month anyway. So do 2 meetings a month if you want to go through this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mattson. Anyone else for public comment? Mr. Mattson?
Good evening, Ryan Mattson, 15091 Western Valley. I do agree. I think it's more prevalent to time if you all just discuss it amongst yourselves, since you'll be the ones making the decisions and going through this whole process. As I understand, it's a very lengthy process. not that committees don't serve their purpose, they're not good, but often a lot is discussed there that doesn't make it to these discussions here. On the topic of cityhood, I do think that this whole situation has been a blunder, from announcing it randomly at the end of last meeting to going to all different news sources by Mr. Delaney and talking about this wonderful thing we're going to be doing as a village, and this whole narrative of trying to save us money. Like, I mean, where was that enthusiasm when we were voting on a building that we're going to have to shell out $600,000+ for and wipe out our funds and hope we get it back on future monies that aren't totally accounted for. We had the opportunity to move into a building that was existing at a lease advantage to the village at low cost. And that was passed on, which is fine, and we're here now, but then we use this situation to be the hero and save us villagers all this money on these taxes, when that huge expense and all the expense of becoming a city over the next years that it will take. I just think it's disrespectful to the village, quite frankly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mattson. Anyone else for public comment on this item? Mr. Mishler.
Joe Mishler, 620 Academy Road. I'm going to try to give you my 75 or 80 years of experience, even though I'm not quite 80. I just want to point out that whether you form a committee from the council or you pick some other kind of committee, we should be really careful with this issue. Now, I've done an extensive study of this issue going back to the end of World War II, right here in Holly. And I can tell you that the minute you let that out of the bottle, get out of the way. It's pretty peaceful right now. But once the word starts to spread, you might find it exceedingly difficult to put it back in the bottle. And it might sound like a really good idea, but if I were sitting on this council, I'd be going out and doing some research and find out about this taxes. Will it really save you money? Now, I'm saying to you, whether you're for or against cityhood, you need to go out and look at real information. Not the information that was put out in that 2002 report, which I found out after I read it and thought, good grief, these people needed they needed an editor. Then I thought, no, they needed somebody who knew what they were talking about. That is the most erroneous thing that I've read in a long time. Then I found out it was a student government project. So if that's the kind of information that's going around, you better get out there and start digging. And there's plenty of information out there. Plenty. You can go to the township library. They'll let you have access to all the old records. There is plenty of stuff out there. And because this is not one of those, we're not talking about putting a memorial in a park here. We're not talking about, whether we should do something for kids or whatever. You're talking about a change that's going to affect everybody in Holly Township, probably Rose Township, probably a little bit of Groveland Township. And, you start throwing words around like taxation and annexation, you better dig in. And you better know what you're talking about. And whether it's a committee, whether it's you don't know what you're talking about, just remember I told you so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mishler. Is there anyone else for public comment on this item? Chief.
Chair. So everybody's thinking, what's he coming up for? Well, because my boss asked me to. So Manager Walker just wanted me to present for some insight how impact, and certainly I'm not here to make a recommendation in either direction, but on behalf of the police and fire departments, what cityhood or non-cityhood would change or how that would look. And he asked me to present that this evening, but I think after listening this evening, I would be certainly willing to repeat these remarks to the exploratory committee or testify in any way that they wanted additional information. But the overall analysis of law enforcement and fire services in a city versus a village, they don't change. So there's no real impact or change operationally, administratively, the material acquisition process, nothing really changes in our world. The only change that it could have or impact that it could have is presently, and I think Mr. Mishler actually had, so everybody's bringing you up tonight, Joe, so I thought I would too.
75 or 80 years.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's only been 30, but he had provided some information previously that I briefed over that, and it's accurate on how, if you change the status, there's 3 forms of government: township, city, village. If you become a city, you go in essence to the top tier within state and federal government for allocation. So cityhood has the potential of different grant funding, or how we would be viewed in grant funding applications. To the extent that would be a benefit, I can't speak on that. I do know that I have applied for grants for years under the village, and I know that city has a different level of authority and status in grant funding application. The only other revenue stream change is, if you notice in our recent federal funding that we received, quite often federal funding will go to a county, and then the counties will allocate those to townships. And then because the village is within the township, you form an agreement between the two as to how we're going to split that up. That would change. So federal allocation dollars would go directly to a city, whether it's based on population or based on, that's my understanding. So, but operationally, and the way we acquisition and operate, really, there's no impact or change. And that's more or less what I think the manager wanted me to express tonight, that it doesn't affect the services that we provide from police and fire in any way.
It's my fault. I asked the question.
Oh, did you? Okay.
That's my fault. You're up there.
No, it's no worries at all. And after listening to everybody, if indeed the exploratory committee would like more information, I can do some research on that at the direction of the manager. And we'd be happy to bring that back. But if anybody has any questions for me, I'd be happy to ask. But I think that's really all I know at this point. And I think that was the impetus, is that he wanted me to express that there would be no change in the delivery of services or the operational aspect of police or fire.
Thank you very much,
All right,
Chief.
thank you.
Is there anyone else for public comment on this item? Seeing none and hearing none, we have motion and support. Ms. Bigger, roll call vote, please.
Kinnaman.
Yes.
Kyer.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Brandon.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
Delaney.
Yes. Motion carries. Reports. Mr. Gildner, do you have anything for us this evening?
Not tonight, thank you.
All right. Ms. Bigger, anything to add to your written report?
No, I have nothing to add to my written report this month.
Anything else from staff? All right. Boards and commission updates and council comments. Ms. Kyer.
I apologize because I'm not the best speaker, so I had to write down our parks report. The Parks Commission met last week after a 2-month hiatus. We received updates regarding ongoing projects from last year's fiscal budget and discussed results from our survey and how that might impact projects for the upcoming year. We were also presented with conceptual drawings for a possible veteran/first responders memorial to be placed in Cyclone. After reading the reports from our administration, I'll see that this will be presented next month to us. So I debated speaking on it now or then, but I think hopefully by speaking on it now, I may get some answers for next month. First and foremost, the conceptual drawings are beautiful. They knocked it out of the park, no pun intended. However, it was quickly overshadowed by the fact that it was just a giant parking lot. Being that I'm a veteran and a Purple Heart recipient, I think that I may be one of the best people to speak on this without being branded as somehow anti-veteran. As a member of the VFW and Legion, I've been involved in many discussions pertaining to memorials and monuments, so I was a bit dismayed to learn that none of our veteran leadership was consulted or asked about this memorial. One would think that the very memorial these people seek to honor would be involved in its process. While this is privately funded, the land on which it sits is publicly held, and thus should be open to questions and suggestions. While beautiful, some commissioners were concerned with the sheer amount of asphalt that would cover almost half the park. When asked about the footprint, we were advised that there would also be an entrance off of Bayard, which would indeed split the park in half. The other half that is left could potentially be used to serve our vintage baseball team, but as many who live close to this park know, it's prone to flooding, which could be made worse by making half of the park into a parking lot. This would leave our families and children to wade into the much less desirable section of the park to simply enjoy one of our most beautiful green spaces. It's my hope that when we decided on Cyclone to house our village offices, that we could make improvements for our families and especially our young children. The top playground here at Carl Richter was leveled, and the new facilities at Lakeside are not conducive to children under 5. For years, our parks have suffered with low budgets and lack of personnel. On our last survey, the word clean was used 13 times. To put that in perspective, splash pad and dog park were used once. As a board, we're consistently being reminded that we just don't have the personnel or budget to add in much needed improvements. And at our meeting last week, I again brought up grant opportunities and was told that they are time intensive and, quote, a lot of work for administration. The pad at Lakeside Park needs repairs, and it's unfortunately out of our budget. We also need upgrades to Waterworks Park's parking lot. My concerns are that if we cannot maintain the equipment that we have now, how can we feasibly serve this monument with dignity? Make no mistake, paving over half the park does not lessen the maintenance, and also isn't cost effective. There are legacy costs involved. I've heard no plans on maintenance or general upkeep. Who's paying for the expanded lot? Who's in charge of patching, lines, snow plows? Who's planting and watering the flowers or paying for the water used in the fountain? Who's paying for the lighting of the flags or the lowering of them at night? If there is surveillance, who's paying for the cameras? Who's resetting tapes and cataloging? These are all considerations that make me question if this project is really at no expense to taxpayers. To their credit, when offered input by commissioners, the group presenting the monument seemed amenable to the suggestions. It's clear they're in the beginning stages, and it's my hope that more input is sought. I want to be clear and concise that I'm not against this memorial. I just want it to be transparent and truthful. As a Parks Board, we were advised that it would be similar to what Lake Orion has in its downtown, and we were encouraged to research it. Based solely on that example, it took Lake Orion 20 years to accomplish their park. It was started in 1994 by a group of citizens. The cost for the main sculpture was $55,000. There are multiple sculptures in that park. That memorial is run by a nonprofit with 8 board members, and they completed it in stages. Far be it from me to bring up concerns without solutions. We actually have monuments, as was spoken about, in multiple village parks that this proposal would work great in. I'd like to explore all those options. We have many monuments in Lakeside dedicated to veterans, and it's where every Memorial Day parade has concluded with a ceremony since I've been around. I fear that having so many monuments spread out across all parks lessens the sanctity of their meaning. When one thinks of a veterans memorial, it's a place that is sacred and hallowed ground, and I'm not sure a parking lot falls into that category. I'm confident that the veteran community will step up to help as they have with every other monument. This is just my 2 cents. I encourage you all to do your own research. I appreciate the hard work of the volunteers. I am proud to live in a community that values those who protect our freedoms. This is in no way a character assassination. I just want to make sure that we're transparent. We're in the beginning stages, and though I see missteps, I hope that we can have these questions answered next month, and that leaders in our veteran community are involved in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kyer.
Sorry for the line.
Mr. Kinnaman.
First of all, the Planning Commission has not met in the month of November nor in the month of December. So we have no old things, and I have not heard if we have anything new coming for the end of this month. Note, actually, to tag on to this a little bit, is I'm not for or against something, but I think it would be nice to see it come from Parks as a, whatever you develop a whole plan for that park. You know, if this fits, or if a redesign of it fits, or if you've got a totally different plan. I would like to see that maybe happen. One of the things about the low lands that are there, they have hauled tons of dirt away from this site already. When they put in all of those tennis courts, they hauled away more dirt than would add a foot deep all the way across that park. They've got another pile out here where they're doing the new building. That dirt's got to go someplace. And I would like to see someone connect with the school district to connect you with the contractor. When I asked in the schools about that dirt, they said it is solely up to the contractor, the general contractor, what happens with that. And they make arrangements for where it's going to go. If we would like that dirt, we need to say so. It could help that park a lot. And then see a nice plan for the whole thing. I've heard things about, a walking path. I've heard a splash pad. I've heard swing sets. I think that all of the above are good options out there. It's just, let's have a plan and have it come through the right channels. Today is Law Enforcement Day. Would like to say our appreciation to our law enforcement. And also the Chamber's annual dinner is the end of this month, and all of you received an invite, I hope, to purchase your tickets. And anyone in the community is also invited to come and be a part of that annual celebration that we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. President Pro Tem Brandon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have two comments from two local people that reached out to me with concerns that couldn't attend tonight's meeting. And I know I already forwarded these concerns to staff, but she wanted to be here in person to address village bathrooms are concerning her, the ones by the vault. Can you please fix? Next, the next woman wanted to maybe address this to Mr. Rozell, maybe address this to a master plan at Parks. I don't know what would be appropriate now that I heard Richard's idea. But she had originally said for this to go to Mr. Rozell. But anyways, she said, hey, maybe the people funding the Veterans Memorial, if it goes through, could also fund the stuff for the splash pad. Just an idea. End quote. I have no updates from the library. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Perkins.
HDC met, we gave the green light to Andy's Place to begin shoring up the building, and that's all I have. Great win by Michigan.
Go blue.
Mr. Harrington.
Well, I'm a Michigan State fan, but go blue.
I hear you, Mr. Harrington.
But anyway, I'd like to say that I went to the HIA meeting this past Thursday. They had a very successful toy giveaway for people that were in need, and both sides were up. People that were giving and people that were needing. And it worked out good that way. They also have a shoe program that worked out well as well. That's all I have to say right now.
Very good. Thank you very much. I have nothing to add except to say Happy New Year to everyone, and thank you very much for serving on council, and thank you to staff.